Good evening. We're still waiting for another 4 students, but let's begin because we have quite a lot to go through today. I scanned through your DBQ, didn't go detail because I got it like a couple minutes ago. So this is our first attempt to decipher DBQ, but normally before we can come up with the thesis and contextualization, we actually need to go through the document grouping. Okay, so if you just if you work on yesterday's homework based on the prompt and based on your knowledge to come up with the thesis and contextualization, that would work for the other essay question in FRQ. Let's call LEQ. LEQ, we don't have documents, right? So if you did not go through documents yesterday and you come up with thesis and contextualization, remember that train of thought. That's how you work on LEQ. Okay. But today we're going to talk about for DBQ, we have a different approach, right? So approach number 1, I have a worksheet right here. I will send it to your TA, okay? And when you get it, use that to prepare for your DBQ. Okay, let me show you the logic right here, right? So first of all, step 1, we're gonna decipher the prompt. Very important. If we misread the prompt or misunderstand the prompt, we are very likely to generate a what we call off-topic essay. If it is off-topic, according to our experience, out of 7, the full mark for DBQ is 7, right? So if we have a off-topic essay, the highest we can get is 3 out of 7, all right? So highly recommend you to spend even like a minute or 2 to better understand what our prompt is asking us to do, all right? So step 1 started from the prompt, okay? And ask yourself, what kind of historical thinking skill the prompt is asking us, okay? Is it comparison? Is it change or continuity or cause effect? Once we identify this historical thinking skill, next step is, okay, if it's comparison, compare what, right? If it's change what? What kind of change, right? And then be careful of your time period. Why? Because sometimes when we're taking exam, we tend to be too excited. When we see 18th century, somehow we mistaken it as 1800. 18th century is 1700, right? So let's do step 1. Go back to this prompt. That's from 2018, okay? So the first thing we wanna pay attention is, thank you. So first thing we wanna pay attention is, let me pull out the pen first. Okay. This prompt, okay, the first verb is what we call commend verb, okay, commend word. So it kind of set the direction of our train of thought. So the first verb right here is evaluate and pair by the extent, all right? So when you say evaluate the extent, it's how whatever. Okay, so how whatever. When you say extent, it's a how question. So right away, remind yourself it's a how question, right? And for how, we can use how to indicate 2 ideas. First idea for how is means. So like, how do you go to school, right? By bus, on foot, whatever, that's means. And second is level, right? Like, how are you today? On a scale from 1 to 10, how happy you are, right? So that's level. So evaluate the extent. So it's like a how whatever, it's level because it's extent, right? So the level of what? Let's see. Which railroads focus on the keywords. Keyword is the noun, right? So which railroad in this case is also the subject, right? So it's gonna focus on the railroads in this case. So which railroads affected the process? So process is the object, right? and it's another noun, right? Okay, so railroads affect the process of empire building. Okay, so how these empires, they gradually build up their power through the help of railroad, right? In Afro-Eurasia, okay, so we have a more specific region, is Afro-Eurasia. So America is out of the picture, okay? So if you want to refer to America, you can use that as what? As your comparison for complexity. But you cannot use America as what? As your evidence to support this railroad help empire building. You can, because it's limited the region within Afro-Eurasia, okay? So this, be very careful, is Afro-Eurasia, all right? Between the time period 1860 to 1918, okay? So we're gonna be careful of this time period because whatever outside evidence we may come up with must fit into this time period, right? Okay, so we locate all the keywords we need to know so far, right? Can we paraphrase the question into something that is easier to understand, that we actually can understand, and make sure we do not write an off-topic essay? Let's see. So evaluate the extent, and I will paraphrase into how. All right. How railroad, right? So how railroad affect the process. Okay. So affect is like an influence, right? The process. So it could be like, aid or speed up, right? Or make it possible because it's a fact, right? Or it could be like, damage, slow, okay, slow down or hinder the process. So either the railroad help, right? Or damage the process of empire building, okay? And based on our knowledge about industrialization and the imperialism era, we actually covered, right? We know railroad served pretty important role to help European powers to build up their empire, right? You recall, we talk about railroad not only transform the European society, right? We have standard time, and then we have the booming economy. Why? Because railroad can transport cargoes, right? Goods. At the same time, passengers, right? So railroad enable the economy to boom because the market is now connected through railroad, right? So that will boom up the consumption, right? So consumers live in a small town, they could purchase something produced in the urban city, right? Because railroad can now ship the goods to their home, or maybe not home, but at least to the nearby station, right? So that's the railroad's effect upon the market growth, right? Also, we mentioned that railroad can also carry what? Passengers, right? And passengers are people. And what kind of people? Well, tourists, right? And that would increase the national identity, right? You start to recognize and even worship, respect your mother country, right? It's like, oh, my country is so awesome, right? Look at that, look at this, right? These are all our achievements, right? So passenger, tourist, national identity, and passenger, military soldiers, what? Expedite, right? The growth of a military force, because now the troops can be mobilized in a more efficient way, right? So that's the railroad's contribution to the military force, right? So railroad actually contribute in the various industry and aspects, right? So we know that that's based on our knowledge, right? So I know this railroad really help, right? The empire building in Afro-Eurasia. And empire building, we know that refers to what? Britain, France, right? Germany, right? Also Netherlands, Italy, right? So all this, industrialized European states, they gradually started to colonize Africa, India, and monopolize Chinese market, right? So that's based on our knowledge. But this is what we know. but our evidence must come from the documents. So in this step, we cannot draft our thesis yet. We have some possible thesis, but our thesis must be supported by arguments. And where do we come up with arguments? Based on the evidence we have, right? And evidence, we must refer to the documents all the way from 1 to 7, right? To 7, right? So in this case, don't rush into your thesis just yet, because we need to see what evidence we have in hand, right? Okay, so in this case, let's do, I paraphrase into this way. How railroad, okay, help the Afro-Eurasia Empire building between 1860 and 1918. That's how I paraphrase the prompt, right? So how railroad help or aid empire building in Afro-Eurasia between this time period. So I paraphrase into this way is easier to understand, right? So how railroad help. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to this. So step 1 finished, right? The historical thinking skill is what? It's not compare, it's what? You can say change or causation, right? Either way will be fine, okay? But at this point, I will just simply paraphrase. I will simply paraphrase the prompt. Why is eraser? I don't want eraser. Okay, I'll use this one. Okay, so I will say, how railroad helped empire building, right? So empire building in Afro-Eurasia, Asia, Europe, and Africa, all right? So Afro-Eurasia between, right, during, so between 1860 to, well, what is the time? 1860 to what? To 1918. Okay, oh, that involves World War I though. Okay, so to 1918. Okay, so how railroad helped empire building in Afro-Eurasia between this time period. Okay, so that's my paraphrase, right? So historical thinking skill, I would say change or cause, all right? Category, compare is not compare, right? What kind of change? I would say change what? Change the ability, right? So enable, I would say enable empire building. Okay, and then because it's change, right? Not really available before, right? Time period, we already identified that is 1860 to 1918, right? So 1860 to 1918. Okay, so we finished step 1, decipher the prompt and paraphrase into the easier way to address the question for ourselves, right? So don't rush to your thesis yet. So at this point, we're gonna do what? We're gonna do document deciphering, all right? Did you take down these notes? Because I'm going to erase that now. Because Zoom does not allow me to fix this and keep going on the rest of the documents, all right? So this is the paraphrase question we have, all right? And then what we can do next is what? Document work, all right? Meaning what? We're gonna go through all 7 documents, all right? And one by one, we're gonna locate the main idea, what this document is mainly about. At the same time, we need to think about, do we have any related outside evidence that fit into document 1's main idea? Because okay, let me show you this rubric, right? This is your big DPQ rubric. Your first point come from your contextualization, and your second point come from your thesis claim, right? Then when it comes to your documents, right, there are altogether 4 points related to documents, all right? The first 2 right here, you are provided with 7 documents, right? And those documents will serve as your evidence to support your argument. So how many documents we're supposed to use? 6. If we manage to correctly use 3 documents to support our argument, we get 1 point. If we successfully use 6, we get additional point. That means 2, right? What if we use 5? 3 documents, 1 point. 6 documents, 2 points. What happens if we only use 5? Sorry, still 1. Still 1 point. So it's either 3 for 1, 6 for 2, all right? And anything else is no. There's nothing in between, all right? So 3 documents, first point. 6 documents, the second point. 4 documents, 5 documents, also 1. If you only use 2 documents, 0. That makes sense? So we're gonna use 6. But to be safe, we normally encourage students to use all 7. Why? What if we misread 1 document? If we misunderstood 1 document and we only use 6, right? And we miss 1, then we only have 5 documents correctly used as evidence to support our argument, right? So we only get 1 point out of 2. Does that make sense? So if you use 7 and somehow you miss 1, that's okay. You still have 6 documents that use correctly to support your arguments, right? So College Board does not care your error. They only look for whatever you do right, all right? So if you provide 6 documents, you read it correctly, and you use that as evidence appropriately, you get 2 points. And the final documents, you use it wrong, don't worry, there's no punishment, all right? So note to yourself, use all 7, use 7 documents, just in case one of them you misunderstand, all right? So that's the first 2 documents you can, first 2 points you can get from evidence, right? And then the third is what? Now we use 6 or 7, right? Amongst these 7, let's assume that we use all 7, right? So amongst these 7 documents, we must choose at least 3 to do analysis. And that's another way to say sourcing. Sourcing. What is sourcing? It's the hip part. This part, hip. All right. So the hip part is what? You need to analyze either the historical background of the document or intended audience of the document or point of view of the document or purpose of the document. We'll talk about that later, right? So as long as you hit 3 documents, and then you can secure the third point in this category called document evidence analysis, right? So these 2 come from your document usage. This point, the third point, come from your HIP or HAP sourcing, right? The last points come from your own knowledge, your database in your brain, to figure out one more evidence that is not mentioned in any of the documents to support your argument. That's what we call outside evidence. How many do we need? At least 1. At least 1. But to be safe, use 2. All right. If you can use 2, use 2. You can use 3, you use 3. The more, the better. Okay. The more, the better. Because if you somehow made error, don't worry. No punishment. No punishment. All right. So 4 points related to your evidence, document, and analysis. That makes sense. So far, we have 6, right? 1 for contextualization, 1 for thesis, 4 for your evidence. That's a 6. And the full mark is 7. There's 1 more. 1 more point come from your complexity. Complexity, there are 5 different ways to get it according to College Board's rubric, all right? Either one of these 5 will do, okay? But the easiest one is what? Alternative views or evidence, all right? So qualifying or modifying an argument by considering diverse or alternative views or evidence, meaning what? You want to qualify your argument, right? So when you're writing your English essay, I believe your teacher mentioned that you don't want to be too extreme, right? You want to present yourself, especially argument essay, right? DPQ is an argument essay because you have a claim, you have argument, you have evidence. That's an argument essay, right? When we write an argument essay, we don't want to be too narrow-minded, meaning what? We only believe on one theory, or we take only one side, okay, and we completely ignore the other side. Because when it comes to argument essay, there's always both sides of the issue. That makes sense. So you can talk about industrialization. You can say industrialization is a blast to human society, but there must be someone say no, industrialization is the curse to human society, right? So you don't want to be too extreme, all right? Sided one opinion and without acknowledge the other part, okay? That will make your argument very vulnerable, easy to be attacked, right? So in this case, you want to make a concession and then you can rebuttal, right? Concession and rebuttal, it's a package deal. When you make a concession, you must rebuttal. Otherwise, you kind of like challenge your own claim, right? Without fighting back. It's like, okay, now I challenge myself. It kind of makes sense. All right, you win, I surrender. All right. So alternative view, meaning what? We make a concession and later we rebuttal, right? We rebut back to prove that we are right. Okay. So here for concession and rebuttal, okay, we have two different ways to do concession rebuttal. Okay, first way is what? Now it's working. So concession plus rebuttal, okay. Concession, what is concession? Okay, this is the easiest way to nail your complexity, all right? Concession is when you acknowledge, okay, when you acknowledge the opposite side, opposite opinion. So in another word is what? When we acknowledge the opposite opinion, that means what? Challenge ourselves, right? So we challenge ourselves. But rebuttal, we have two rebuttal. We have two possibilities. Like back to the industrialization, all right? So if my thesis is industrialization, it's a blast to human society. And my argument is it improved the life quality, all right? And then it connects the world into a global age, all right? So I have two arguments, right? So it improved human society's life quality. Number two, I claim that it connected world into a global age, all right? Now, I will ask myself, is it possible my claim be challenged? Very. How about the environmental threats? Because of industrialization, we overutilize the nature resource that lead to the extreme weather, right? Okay, so if somebody challenge our thesis in this way, say, wait a second, industrialization lead to the extreme weather. How do you respond to that? Are they right or are they wrong? Well, they're right, right? Because it's the fact, right? So rebuttal, we have two possibilities. First possibility is that I know what you are thinking, all right? And you are right. You are right. So I know, you don't have to say so. I know what you're thinking and you are right. You are right. But here comes your but mine is better. Mine is better, or mine is more reasonable, all right? That's the first rebuttal we can approach, all right? Now, second rebuttal is what? I know what you're thinking, but you're wrong. You are wrong, right? So we have two ways to rebuttal. If the possible challenge to our thesis, it's a fact we cannot deny, then we might as well just recognize it, acknowledge it, right? Why? Because if you acknowledge it, you actually enable yourself to rebuttal. But if you don't recognize it, once you publish your essay, you're done. You will receive a whole bunch of criticism. Criticize you being so narrow-minded, right? Are you blind? Don't you know the extreme weather is the product of industrialization? And at that point, your thesis, your argument becomes so vulnerable. That makes sense? So that's why College Board asks us to present our logical thinking, critical thinking. Okay, why I'm thinking this way? Is there any other possibility to explain that situation? Oh yeah, you need to recognize that. If you do so, pair with rebuttal and you have your alternative views to support your complex understanding, all right? So this is the easiest way to secure your complexity. All right, we'll focus on practicing this approach for now. If you can do that, use it when you take the exam. All right, because for the exam, we're aiming to get 7 out of 7. So whatever College Board is looking for, we provide that information. That's good enough for exam. All right, but for your history class at school, it's a different story. DBQ actually is trying to train you to think like a historian, and this critical thinking actually can help you in the whole 9 yards in your future study at college, right? But for the exam purpose, let's just focus on this concession rebuttal, all right? So this is the last point we need to secure. If we do so, we have 7 out of 7 full mark, all right? So this is the rubric. Now let's go back to the worksheet, right? So for prompt, we know, okay, we paraphrase the question. Now, we're gonna go through document 1 to 7, right? But today we're just gonna use 1 and 2, for example. So let's do document 1 together, all right? Who is that? I don't recognize the name though, but welcome to the class. So now, again, the subject is railroad. We're gonna focus on railroad, all right? And affect or like enable the empire building, okay? So document 1, let's see, source, all right? The source is petition in English to the British colonial government of India from British Indian Association, an organization consisting of high caste Indians. Okay, so far I know it's 1866. That's what? That's the beginning, okay. That's the beginning of the imperialism, right? It's also is the beginning of the second wave of industrialization, right? And remember we talked about that Britain actually led the first wave of industrialization, right? And Germany followed to lead the second wave. All right. So here we have a petition. So you sense the tone, right? Petition in English to the British colonial government. All right. So it's a petition from the colony. A petition from the colony. You already sense the tone. The colony is submits themselves to the mother country, right? And which colony we're talking about? India. Okay, good enough. Let's go. Railroad. Oh, very important. Okay, that's a subject right here, right? Railroad, the subject. So railroad travel for Indians, natives, has for a long time been full of the most bitter. Okay, so Indians travel by railroad, misery and serious grievance. Okay, so I will say railroad versus Indian is negative. All right. The miseries suffered equal the horrors of the Middle Passage. So it's a little bit exaggerated, right? Do you still remember what is Middle Passage? Alex, do you remember what is Middle Passage? Alex?
No, I forgot.
So Middle Passage is what? Is the triangular transatlantic trade, recall? Before we have Columbian exchange, right? 2 players, America and Europe, right? And later on they need, slaves, right? So they make one more stop in Africa. So in Africa, European loaded up the boat with slaves and unloaded them in Caribbean Sea, the islanders, right? So that passage is called Middle Passage. So when you see Middle Passage, slave trade, right? So this Indian writer compared themselves to the slaves. So yeah, a little bit exaggerated, but still you sense the tone. Once again, it's very miserable, all right? Okay, let's see why. We will beg to draw your attention to the bad treatment of native passengers. So native refers to Indians, right? So bad treatment to Indians. So once again, they suffer, with no distinctions being made between them. Okay, so them refers to whom. When you see pronoun, be careful. Make sure you understand it refers to whom, all right? So them refers to the closest noun, that would be native passengers, so that would be Indians, right? So for Indians, there's no distinction. Why? Because India has caste system, right? So indiscriminate abuse is lavished freely without regard to difference in rank. We are right. Difference in rank. So associate with what? Caste system, right? So this is caste system. And social scale, again, caste system. So we're right. Passengers have often been struck and otherwise treated with a great indignity. Okay, so these Indian passengers, they are being discriminated upon by British, right? So passengers travel in second class are not even allowed to get to the platform, but are made to herd, compare themselves to livestock. You see, kind of echo this Middle Passage slavery, right? With the masses outside. So you are not even guaranteed to get on the train, right? We would like to emphasize the painful fact that the most respectable natives, that's caste system in the higher end, right, are liable to personal ill treatment and loss from their European fellow passengers in the second class carriage. Okay, so far we sense the complaint from the higher social caste Indians, complaining that we are not being treated as equal as everybody else, right? Our social caste did not bring us any privilege, right? And we're being treated like the livestock. We're like, slave, okay? That's what we get so far. And then keep going. It says, native gentlemen of birth and respectable ability in striving to avoid the large crowds to be found in the third class carriage. So once again, complaining about the mistreatment, right? And find themselves even worse off in a second class seat. So basically, the entire second paragraph is complaining how miserable the Indians, especially the noble Indians, right? The higher social class Indians being mistreated. So they were not treated before like that, right? Until Britain come, right, to colonize them, right? And then in a variety of ways, attempts are increasingly made to degrade and insult second class passengers. So it doesn't matter it's a first class, second class, third class, right? None of these passengers, Indian passengers, being treated with dignity, right? So we want to draw attention here to the present impossibility of native ladies, okay, of respectable birth, again, high class, right? And the breeding, taking advantage of railroads, okay, railways. The honor of our wives and families is very dear and sacred to us. So we want to protect our women, right? And the advent of the railroad, finally, railroad again, right? So the keyword, the advent of the railroad has cut off old modes of transit without providing adequate ones for respectable women. Okay, so far, if we want to summarize this document, I would say it's a complaining letter from a higher caste Indians, okay, to about the mistreatment or the experience they have on the railroad, right, to the British government, right? And at this time, 1866, they were already British colonies, right? Okay, so with that in mind, let's try to summarize the main idea here, all right? So if you want to summarize the main idea, Jason, how would you summarize that?
Pardon, can you say that again?
If you want to summarize the main idea for document 1 and focus on the railroad, because that's the prompt, right? Railroad help empire building. So how would you summarize that? Empire building means European power take control of the colonies, right? And when you control the colony, you control politics, economics, social, everything. So is there any signs indicate in document 1 that regards to the Europeans control the colonies?
In this passage,
Uh-huh.
it's a petition it's a petition to the British colonial government of India.
Right.
So this means Britain has already colonized India. And railroads helps connect the country, I guess.
Wait. Document 1, where did you see that?
Yeah.
Railroad help connect the country? Where did you see that? In
No,
document
it
1.
doesn't say it in the document, but I'm just saying how it relates to railroads.
But now we're trying to decipher document 1. So you can only stay with the fact, whatever document 1 present. So there's no such claim in document 1 saying railroad connect the nation. So basically I see complaint, right? There's a big complaint. So I will write down here. Complaint from Indians, right? Indians, noble. All right. So I'm making notes. I don't need to make a complete sentence. It's just my note, right? So complaint from Indian nobles. Why? Railroad degrade their what? Caste, right? Privilege, right? What else? Britain, okay. Britain had to do something, right? To do something in regard. All right. So this is the main idea I summarize for document 1. Complaint from Indians noble. Railroad degrade their caste privilege. Britain must do something. So far, so good, right? Okay. And then do we have any outside evidence that's similar to the situation here? No. The original, the initial noble families, okay, in the colonies, now because of this colonization and even because of this railroad, it's kind of undermine their social status. Do we have any evidence related to that? Can you think of any? If you cannot, forget about it. All right, don't worry too much now. I will just say I can't think of any. I'll have a big question mark. And then hip is trying to analyze what happened then, historical context that would lead to the author's writing of this document. So the historical context is pretty much in documents, right? So British control India, right? And then have this superior dominant British to control, to govern Indians. So India become the subject, the vassal to the British government, right? And that would somehow provoke this noble Indians' anger. Of course, they used to have this luxury life, right? And they're being on the top of this social hierarchy. They're enjoying this privilege as a noble and receive the respect from everyone else. But now not anymore. They are being degraded to like everybody else. So the historical context and related to this railroad, I would say historical context is what? British, right? British degrade Indian noble, right? Indian noble after colonization, right? And that lead to the anger. What happened? That lead to anger, right? Anger amongst what? Nobles, right? In India, all right? Historical context. Will that help us to support our thesis or argument eventually? Not quite sure, but at least we have like, lord versus vassal, this kind of idea, right? That echoes the colonization imperialism, right? So that help us to support the idea of this imperialism practice in India. How? Undermine or discriminate, make the colonized people the subject, okay, to the mother country, right? And intended audience, in this case, this audience is obvious, right? British authority. Why do we want to analyze who the audience is? For this document is a letter, it's a petition letter to British authority, right? So now we know who the audience is. So what? So what, Jace? So what? Why do we need to know who the audience is?
So that we can choose to have more context.
Choose what?
To like include more context.
For example, is it more
if you're
content?
writing to like some London person, you need to include a little bit more context as they have no idea what's going on. But if you're writing to a British authority, they will have some idea to what's going on in their economy, so you can include a little bit less context.
Context is a historical context. Okay. The reason, thank you, Jace. All right. What you just explained, it fit right into historical context. It's a try to understand why the author will write this letter. Okay, why the author write this letter? Because they feel oppressed by this colonizer, right? That's a historical context. We try to figure out why, what happened that lead to this document being written. That's a historical context. But when we analyze audience, right, it will help us to determine the tone of the documents, the tone, all right? Because intended audience will establish the tone of documents. Why do we want to know the tone? So the tone right here, it's more like a complaining, you see? So the intended audience is the British authority, right? So you're writing a petition letter to your superior, your lord. Normally, it probably will adopt more formal, respectful tone, right? But in this letter, in this document, no, it's all this complaining, right? So you see, this tone help us to analyze the author of this petition letter still uphold his dignity, his pride. And that's why he adopt this tone, this complaining tone. It's like, I'm no less than you. Before you came, I was the lord, I was the noble, right? And now he tried to colonize our country and at least show some respect to us, the noble, right? So you sense the tone is more complaining, right? So when understanding the tone, we can better understand how reliable this document is, right? So I would say pretty reliable because there's no sugarcoating. There's no sugarcoating anywhere in this document, in this letter. So you can say, in this letter, the author did not show respect to the British authority as most colonists would, and that actually enhance or like increase the reliability, okay, or it actually make the petition letter more reliable to reflect the social issue back then, right? So you say social issue back then, and then social issue, it can have a modifier say that the colonized people, okay, had been discriminated upon. All right, so this is the reason why we analyze intended audience. So you can locate the tone. And if the tone is like a sugar coated, then you gotta, as a historian, you question, maybe this letter is not so reliable, did not address to the whole truth, right? So I will keep that in mind when I use this evidence to support my argument, right? I may have like, concession rebuttal based on this document. Does that make sense? That's why we need to have we need to analyze who the intended audience is. That will help us to identify the tone. Okay. And so what? So we can determine. All right. So we can determine how reliable this document is to help us, right? To help us generate an argument or claim, right? You're writing an argument essay, you want to make sure that the evidence you collect is reliable, right? If you're writing a school essay, right, and all the evidence you generate is from social media, are they reliable? Probably not, because social media, you're gonna analyze what's the intention of this social media, to attract attention so they can make money out of the audience. And in that case, that whatever being reported may not be true. Makes sense? So you are thinking like a historian, okay? You want to make sure the evidence is valuable to you, okay? If you're taking IB at the same time, all right, then you know when you write any paper 2, right? A paper 1 as well. You're gonna analyze paper 1, question 2. You're gonna analyze the value and the limitation, right? How valuable this document is in regard to this case study. How limited this document is. Okay, if it's way too limited, I probably won't use it. That makes sense. But don't worry, for AP, all the documents here, they are valuable, because College Board already screened the documents for us. All right, so that's audience, right? Do we want to have analyze the point of view, POV? Point of view is how the author view upon the topic that is being addressed in the document. So the topic here is what is the main idea, right? It's the mistreatment of the Indian noble family when taking railroad, right? Railroad. And what's the point of view of the author? Well, obvious here, right? Complaining tone, right? So the point of view is not fair, right? Or wrong. Okay. So why do we want to analyze the author's point of view, Lucas?
Is it to see if they're trustworthy or not?
Definitely, right? And how can this point of view help us to identify whether or not we can trust this document? How? So point of view basically is the opinion, right? The author has towards this topic. So it's a pre-existing opinion before the author started writing this document. Agree?
Yeah.
So if you already have a pre-existing opinion, that will make you possibly biased.
Untrustworthy?
Bias, right? Possible?
Yeah.
So if the author is already biased, then how much can you trust this document? Be careful.
Not that much.
There you go, right? So point of view, not fair, wrong. And we know this point of view is established by the tone, is complaining, right? So we can say, okay, bias about the topic, right? So you will be careful. You can, there's another way, another point you can make a concession rebuttal, right? So even though the author's point of view towards this issue already incorporated with the personal bias, right? Nevertheless, the situation the author reflect is based on certain truth, right? Certain facts, right? Therefore, blah blah blah. You can circle back to support your argument. For example, like the European power, okay, use railroad to undermine the colonists, the colonies, right? So Europeans use railroad to establish their authority within the colonies. in order to support or like enhance or expedite their empire building. You see, so your analysis of any documents, in this case we just did, is analyze of document 1 in point of view, right? But don't forget, after you analyze the point of view, you cannot find a way to circle back to support your thesis. So your thesis could be like, you know, a railroad building enable the European states to speed up or like to strengthen their empire building, okay, in Afro-Eurasia, right? And then you have document 1 saying that, look, this is true. The railroad enable the Europeans to establish their authority, right, within the colonies by undermining the colonies' social status, right? A letter addressed to, now you cite your evidence, right? A letter addressed to the British authority from a Indian noble family, blah, 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 right? And you describe this main idea of document 1, right? And then you started to hap, all right? You say, of course, the author incorporate a biased personal opinion, right? Or of course, since the author used to be, or since the author is considered as the high social caste in Indian society, he is incorporated with the personal bias towards this issue. Nevertheless, the situation he reflects to British authority is historical truth, right? Therefore, Europeans can use or rely on this railroad building to enhance their authority in their colonies to expedite their empire building. I hope you're following me, all right? You see what we're doing here? We cite the evidence, we briefly summarize what the document is, and then we use the document to support our argument, saying that railroad building enable the Europeans to establish their authority in the colonies. Why? Undermine the local people's social class, right? Social status, right? And then you claim so this evidence is appropriate to support your argument, right? And then you want to be insightful. Then you say, of course, right? The author is considered as a high caste member in India, right? He may have a bias and he may have exaggerated the situation due to his personal bias towards the situation, right? Nevertheless, the situation reflected in this letter is historical truth, right? Hence, Europeans adopt railroad building to establish their authority in the colonies. You see the logic right here? That's why we want to analyze the point of view so we can identify whether or not this document is exaggerated or understated or incorporated with bias, right? But even if so, how much can you trust it? Right? How much we can trust it? That would be your analysis of document 1 in the point of view category. All right. And the next P is purpose. All right, P is purpose. So this letter, the purpose should be obvious, right? It's a petition. So it's seeking for a certain change, right? Or certain help, certain aid, you name it, right? So whose turn is that? One sec. Lucas, Maggie, Nicolette, can you identify the purpose of this letter?
I think this letter is complaining about like the terrible conditions of how the upper class Indians are treated. So they want the British government to like bring change into the ways they are treated.
Uh-huh. So bring change, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. So the purpose is what? Hoping British authority can bring change, right? Why? Because according to the author, they deserve it, right? This nobles, Indian nobles, they deserve respect, right? So purpose is to what? Appeal to the British, right? British authority. Why does that to me? Authority, right? Authority to make a change, right? And show respect, right? Show respect to the nobles in India. Right? Okay, so now we identify the purpose. So what? Why do we need to identify the purpose of this letter? Okay, let's see. Nina, you feel better now? Can you talk? Nina?
So I think that we need to know the purpose because it tells us why the Indians wanted to appeal to the British authority and what they wanted to do.
Why they want to do so? Yeah, so we identify why, right? Because they want to make a change, but they cannot, right? They don't have the power to change the situation. Who has the power? The authority, and the British authority, right? So here we know the purpose is to appeal to the British authority to make a change. So can we conclude that even they're considered as the Indian nobles, but they don't have the power to change the situation? We can conclude that, right? If they could change the situation, they wouldn't have to write this appeal petition letter, right? So that's another evidence to support our argument. Look, railroad building really helped the European powers to control the colonies, right? And expedite their empire building. Can we claim that? We can. Because through the purpose of this letter, we can conclude that railroad building stripped off colonies power, okay, or ability to govern or regulate their own society, even the noble class, right? So that's evidential. Evidential in what way? Evidential that railroad building can help the European powers to expedite their empire building or to strengthen their empire building. Does that make sense? That's why we need to know the purpose. So the purpose can help us to draw conclusions that, okay, so even the noble in India, they feel powerless. And that already proved that railroad building, all right? So India, British authority may have done that on purpose, right? Use railroad and do not distinguish the social class amongst the native Indians, right? And then kind of like, teach the Indians a lesson, who's the boss? The Britain, right? I don't care, you're noble, but you're just like, everyone else, okay? Because you're living under British, rule. And in Britain, you are not noble. That makes sense? So that's why we analyze the HAPP. But when we take the exam, okay, we only have 1 hour to write DBQ. And normally we spend 10 to 15 minutes to do this part, the document work, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, all right? So if you want to have every document, you may not have enough time. So normally this is what I do, HAP, right? So if I look at document one and say, which elements, HAPP, which one can better support my argument that railroad building, so far I know I have a possible argument here, is railroad building enable the European power to establish their authority in the colonies, right? And that enable them or enhance their empire building process, right? So they can control the colonized people, right? So in that case, which one? Historic context, I don't think is that direct support my argument. British audience possible point of view, purpose. I probably use purpose, right? Because purpose, we can say, well, you see, that's why European powers, they rely heavily upon railroads during their empire building, because that's a means to show the colonized people, right, who's in charge. Does that make sense? So that's what we do. Okay, so that's document 1, right? Now let's see document 2. Excuse me. Document 2, Shen Baozhen. Okay, all right. Qing Dynasty official and advocate of domestic reform. Okay. Memorandum to the Qing court. So it's a Qing official addressed to the Qing court, right? And it's a memorandum. Okay, so it's kind of, this is something the Shen Baozhen had in mind, right? And he planned to report it to Qing court, right? And let's see what he has to say. What should we do about telegraphs and railroads? Rhetorical question. Okay, sophisticated. The Qing dynasty built the Great Wall. Okay, and at the time, it was considered a disaster, but later generations rely on it. Okay, so the cost to build the Great Wall cost is high. Could be money, could be life, right? But it's worth it. So you see the analogy right here? So he is posing a rhetorical question, say, what should we do? So I can sense he believed Qing should build railroad, because Qing dynasty built a Great Wall, even though at that moment it would be considered as like disaster. But later on, it protect China, right? So right now, if we build railroads, it may cost us a lot, right? And you may have like a resistance from the society, maybe, right? Because you try to westernize, right? No, we don't want to westernize. Could be, right? But it's worth it. If you look in the long term, it's worth it. So basically, it's Great Wall. Right at that moment, not worth it, right? But in long term, it worth it. So that pretty much answer to his earlier question already, right? We should build railroad. If telegraphs and railroads are built, China will likewise enjoy great benefits. Yeah, so his POV is right here, right? Supporting the proposal of building railroad, right? From them in the future, okay? And is looking for the long-term benefit, right? Moreover, as the work of constructing them is enormous, it will be quite beneficial to the poor people now. Oh, government fiscal policy provide job opportunity, right? So not only there's a long-term benefit, short-term, temporary at the present is also good, because it can provide jobs to the poor people, right? However, although the foreigners pled with the court to conclude a formal treaty permitting them to begin this work, so foreigners want to take the chance to make money, right, by helping Qing government to build railroad. So this absolutely must not be done. Okay, so Shen Baozhen said, if you want to build railroad, you cannot build it on your own, on our own, right? And perhaps the government should give its generous permission, but only if the Western interest can devise a plan that would guarantee that no arable fields, okay, houses and ancestry graves would be harmed in the least. Oh, okay. So there's a precondition. If the government want to show their generosity, okay, their mercy, and allow the foreigners to build this railroad for China, that's under the condition that the foreigners guarantee they will not damage, right, arable field, farming land, houses, ancestral graves, right, feng shui could be, will be harmed in the least. Otherwise, permission should decidedly not be given. Okay, so document 2. If you want to conclude document 2 in related to railroad building, This time we do have railroad building is proposed by Qing's official, right? Shen Baozhen. And this time is different from document 1, right? Document 1 we know is the petition from the colonized people. And from here we can imply or conclude that railroad building really help the empire building for Britain, right? But document 2, China was not building an empire. China was an empire already, right? But China was considered as like, the empire that is declining, losing control of its own empire, right? So these railroad building in related to empire building, okay? So this railroad building in related to empire building in China, Qing's dynasty's case, not really supporting, right? But don't worry, remember, we need a concession rebuttal. See, alternative viewpoint, right? So now we are talking about the first argument, possibly establish authority for European states through railroad building, right? And how about in China? It's not for empire building purpose. It's try to defend or that restore their power in the world. Possible. So that could serve as your alternative viewpoint. That's your concession rebuttal. All right. So for document 2, let's summarize it first. All right. Who can summarize that? For document 2, kind of related to our prompt, our thesis, or our argument. All right, Ren, could you do the honor and try to summarize document 2? Ren, are you there?
I'm there.
Okay. So document 2.
I think document 2 basically says that it's like the Muslims, they cannot
Wait. Where do you see Muslim for document 2? Where do you see Muslim? There's no Muslim. Okay.
I look at document 3.
Oh, okay. 2.
I think 2 is basically saying that like there are some benefits for letting the foreigners get in and build railroads, but the Chinese government should not always believe in the foreigners.
Okay. So yeah, you're on point, right? So the document 2 main idea related to railroad is what Chinese official, right? Official pro railroad building, right? Why? Long term. Okay, so long term benefit, right? And distrust foreigners, right? Okay, so that's the main idea we can locate from document 2, right? So based on document 2, we can think about, okay, railroad building not necessarily just being utilized by empire building process. In China's case, it's already an empire. So building railroad is trying to reclaim their power, right? Could be. So I can use document 2 here is like a not empire building because China is already an empire, right? But to regain, right, power in the world, right? So that's my concession. So here I will say, this is my concession, right? Could be because it's not related to empire building, all right? Do we have any other evidence that related to this? The previous dominant power in the world being the victim to the empire building to a point. They had to adopt industrialization to defend themselves. China is one case. Anything else? So this is 沈葆桢, right? Oh, another evidence you can think about what? Guangxu, right? Guangxu's reformation. That's another evidence in related to this part, right? So I will write down, because this document reminds me of Guangxu's reformation, right? But only for 100 days, right? Guangxu 100 days reformation. That's the outside evidence, right? Does that fit into the time frame? Let's see. Yes, because Guangxu died in 1905. So his reformation definitely fit into this timeline, right? Okay, and you can do the same thing for HAP. We're not going to do that now, right? So now we have 2 documents being analyzed, right? So next step, you do the same thing for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all right? Next step is document grouping, all right? So first group, I will say, railroad building help the empire building process to a pretty large extent, because the question is how important, right? I would say pretty important though. Why? Because it helped the Europeans to establish authority within the colonies, right? So my document, I will put down document 1, right? Wait, I can put down document 1. I don't know, maybe we have document 3. I'm just making a guess, right? Document 4. Okay, document 5, maybe. If all 4 documents, they claim the same thing. Okay, the railroad building enabled the process of empire building, or I said railroad enable or strengthen the process of empire building in the way that European states can establish their authority in the colonies. If we have these 4 documents, they all claim the same thing here. And now put these 4 documents together in group 1, right? So this group category would be what? In this case, the group category would be established, right? So it's definitely established, right? Establish authority in the colonies, right? Of course, you can refine your argument later on. So based on that, we have topic sentence now, right? Okay, so how would you write your topic sentence in this way? Don't forget the subject is railroad, right? So my topic sentence for this body paragraph will sound something like that. Railroad enabled the process of empire building significantly. Because to what extent, right? Significantly as it helped the Europeans to establish authority within their colonized land. All right, that would be my topic sentence. Railroad enabled the process of empire building significantly as it helped the Europeans to establish authority within their colonized land. And evidence, document 1, 3, 4, 5. That makes sense. And you do the same thing for the rest of documents. So perhaps you have group 2 is document 2, 6, 7. All right, in this case, you can forget about group 3 and you have 2 body paragraph and you figure out what's, document 2, 6, 7 have in common. So this is what authority and it's social, right? It could be economy though. So railroad building expedite the development of economy within the colonized land, and that further enable the European powers to expand their empire building process. That could be your second argument. That makes sense. All right. So this is the train of thought when we work on DBQ. Step 1, make sure you understand the prompt clearly. Who's the subject? Okay. What is this keyword I need to address to? Right. So here is how much, right? How much railroad help the process of empire building, right? And then we do the document work. Okay. Go through the main idea and think if we have any related outside evidence, and we do the HIP, and the HIP is there to help us to identify how reliable the document is. And once we identify that, we need to find a way to use it to support our argument, right? And then you started to group your documents. Okay, so 1, 3, 4, 5, the same family right here. 2, 6, 7, another family. All right, and then based on that, let's say this is economy. Wait a second, 2 is not. 2 is to regain, right? So I will put number 2 here because it's not empire building, it's to regain power, right? So here you can say 沈葆桢, right? So here is former empire to regain power in the world, right? World, right? But I don't need a topic sentence. I can pair question 2 with, not question 2. I can pair document 2 with the other, whatever argument I want. So although, right? So this, I'll note to myself, this is concession, right? So this would be although. Right? Concession. Right, so although. Right, and why do I need to do so? It's my alternative viewpoint, right? Why? Complexity, right? Okay, so we have concession, we have 2 arguments. Now it's time to write your thesis. So in your thesis statement, that's your homework yesterday. Strongly recommend you to make a concession right away. Although, because now we have 2 arguments that strongly support our thesis that to a very large extent, railroad help the process of empire building. But how do you explain document 2? Document 2 is China, it's not building empire. And that's okay, we'll use that as a concession, right? And then in our thesis statement, we already mentioned this concession. So what? So we already laid the path to our complexity. So I would say, although X is your concession, right? Counter argument. So although railroad was adopted, okay, by some states to regain some states, plural, right? Their glory or their power, right? Or you can say to reclaim glory. It's up to you. You can decide later, right? So although railroad was adopted by some states to regain their power or reclaim glory in the world, right? In the world, right? And then you said because, right? Although this is true, right? Because of the need to establish authority in the colony. That's our first argument, right? In the colonies, and the desire, if we have economy, right? The desire to economic gain, because of the need to establish authority in the colonies and the desire to economic gain, that would further enhance the process of empire building, right? Empire building, right? Although, yeah, that's true. Railroad not necessarily being adopted just for empire building. It could be adopted to regain the glory. But you know what? Because the needs to establish authority, plus the economic gain to further enhance the process of empire building, right? The railroad, and you want to answer to the question is to what extent, right? I would say to a very large extent. Okay. Helped the process of empire building during 1860 and 1918. Okay, so this is our thesis statement. Let's examine if our thesis statement addressed to the prompt directly. Evaluate extent. Do we have that? Yes, we do. To a very large extent, all right? Next, which railroad, okay, why, right? Railroads affected the process of empire building. Do we have that? Yes, we do. Railroad, we have two. Helped, right? Helped the process. Helped. You want to be more specific, you can say speed up. Okay, speed up or helped is up to you. And we have a line of reasoning right here. Need to establish authority, right? Desire for economic gain. So this part, authority, economic gain, helped together addressed to this part of the prompt is what? Affect the process of empire building. Oh, we need to include Afro-Eurasia. Okay, so let's see. So here, add in Afro-Eurasia, right? Eurasia. Okay, so this part addressed to Afro-Eurasia, right here. Do we have the timeline? Yes, 1860 to 1918. So by doing so, you are secured for the first point for thesis. At the same time, you already laid a path for your complexity, because this although already indicates you have alternative view to the claim. Okay, I'll give you a couple seconds to think about that. So far, we are now up to this thesis statement. So thesis statement, so far, do you have any questions? How we came up with the thesis statement step by step through deciphering the prompt, work on the document, and group the document and come up with a category and enable us to write this topic sentence. And we also we're lucky we have documents already support our concession, like although, right? And then you will address your thesis statement here. Okay, so I'll give you a couple seconds, think about that. Questions. If you do have questions, raise your hand, please. No? Wow, you guys are awesome. Okay, quick learner, good job, good job. So this is one part of your homework yesterday, right? Thesis. Now let's talk about contextualization. So what is contextualization? It's basically what happened before that lead to the topic we're discussing right now. So what happened before that actually lead to this empire building and the railroad? So when we look at the railroad, the first thing remind us, oh, for your contextualization, it can go before the time period given in the prompt, all right? So before this empire building, what era we know that enabled this empire building? Try to think. Before empire building, imperialism, what era do we remember that's related, that enabled the Europeans to use and to take the advantage of railroad in their empire building process, all right? Sunny without C, are you there? Sunny?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so can you think of any historical events that will be responsible for this railroad building in this topic? What enabled Europeans to build railroad? Where are you? You disappeared. What enabled the Europeans? Good question. What enabled Europeans to build railroad? Okay, I give you a hint. Railroad require steam engine. So when you think about steam engine, that will remind you of what historical development prior to railroad building? Steam engine. How about industrialization? Is it possible? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so one possible contextualization we can mention to introduce this railroad construction, you can say industrialization. Because of industrialization that lead to the invention of this steam engine that enable Europeans to construct railroad, right? And that later on enabled the Europeans to establish the authority in the colonies, right? Okay, so other than industrialization, what else we know? Sunny C, are you there? Sunny C? Sunny C? Hey, can you think of any other contextualization historical events that happened prior to the railroad being the major means to control the colony? Uh-huh. Yellow.
Yeah.
Right. You're lagging, breaking up. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Sort of. Yes. Okay. You can type because your voice is pretty soft for some reason. Okay, and we have a new friend joining us. Who is that? Xiaomai Wang. I don't know how to read that word. How to pronounce that word? Wang Jing. Wang. Who's that? Xiaomai. Maggie, do you know who that student is? Okay. A bit shy. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Alex. Alex, can you think of any historical event here?
Not really.
Okay. What enabled Europeans to industrialize?
Their resources, I guess.
Sure. And this resources was already there, existing for centuries, but why all of a sudden now?
I don't know.
Push one era back. Yes, Sunny?
Maybe wealth.
Grow. Oh, I see. Growth of population. Thank you. Right. So growth of population that enlarge the labor force, right, and increase the the productivity could be. So I will write it down. Growth. Thank you. Growth of population, right, in Europe. And what lead to this growth of population? What lead to this growth of population? Well, we're recycling our knowledge from the previous unit. Jason, can you think of a reason why? Why all of a sudden the population in Europe, began to grow?
Well, they have better technology. They weren't being decimated every couple of decades by the plague.
Okay,
yeah,
so you want to
I'd
start
say-
from the Black
yeah.
Death? So Black Death actually decreased the population, and then what happened later that population grow back again? Do you recall? Principle
Well,
in
it's mostly
history.
due to advances in technology. So people, well, especially medical technology, so people will live longer. Not as much people will die from diseases.
Oh, be careful. That's the industrialization wave 2. Yes, Sunny?
Like business.
Did you say business?
Yeah.
Okay, what business we're talking about? How about Colombian exchange? Colombian exchange. Colonization. Yeah, sure. The first wave, right? Okay, Nicolette, good thinking, but when you say colonization, you want to be specific. That's the first wave, because the topic right here, empire building, is also a colonization, right? But it's a second wave. So you can talk about a triangular. Yes, okay. So Colombian exchange already brought in food, right, from America. And remember the history, the principle of history, more food equals to more babies, population growth, right? So Colombian exchange, population, people increase, right? Increase. Normally, I'll just draw an arrow pointing up. I'll show you how I will do this note, okay? So Colombian exchange, right? I will say up because of that. So people, the population increase. When I take the exam, I will try to save time as much as possible, right? So people more, right? That means population. Oh, so I see. I have 3 historical events right here. If I want to place them in the timeline, chronological timeline, which one happened first? Colombian exchange, right? So I have Colombian exchange here that lead to growth of population here, that lead to the capability for Europeans to industrialize, right? And of course, something is missing here. Democracy, right? Capitalism, okay. So you can talk about capitalism, right? So you can add capitalism here. So make sure your chain of logic is, coherent, right? So capitalism, you can add one more here. Capitalism, right? Capitalism is also, you can use that as like a parallel, right? Coexist. So first we have Colombian exchange that increased the population in Europe, right? And at the same time enrich the new rising social class called gentry, right? And this gentry class, okay, they were responsible to the new economic system called capitalism, right? And with this capitalism ideology, Europe was able to adopt this industrialization, right? And that further boom up the productivity in Europe, right? To a point, the invention of steam engine, right, enabled the Europeans to invent a new means of transportation, railroad, right? And railroads, okay, significantly transformed European society, not only in the cargo transportation, but in this military mobilization and the establishment of national identity, right? So that's my contextualization, right? Therefore, okay, the railroad, the invention or like the railroad system. Okay, we can use system, right? Therefore, although we need a law, right? So although railroad, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you have your contextualization and then you have your thesis. But between your contextualization and thesis, you need to figure out a way to connect the argument, right? So you have contextualization, you gotta figure out a way why this contextualization can lead to your thesis, right? And you can say railroad became a major means for Europeans to colonize Africa, India, and monopolize the Chinese market, right? So in a way, railroads contribute big time to the empire building process. And then you can say, although railroad was adopted, blah, 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 blah. That makes sense. So this is your contextualization, and you figure out a way to connect to your thesis. All right. So triangular trade also work. Thank you, Nicolette. All right. And then you need to think about outside evidence. How many we need to secure this 1 point? We only need to provide one outside evidence, but to buy insurance, mention as many as you can, right? In case this evidence doesn't fit into the timeline, right? But if we provide like a 3-4 outside evidence, that I'm pretty sure at least one fitting into the timeline, right? So you can get this point for outside evidence, right? And you just find a way to incorporate this outside evidence in your body paragraph, and that will do. All right. So this is the step-by-step DBQ worksheet. All right. Step 1, decipher the prompt. Step 2, work on the documents. This one is most time consuming in this process. All right. And then step 3, grouping. And from there, you already have pretty good idea what topic sentence you may have, right? And then step 4, you write your thesis statement and remember to include this concession that will secure your complexity right away. And then push the timeline back. Try to ask yourself, based on what European have railroad? Oh, industrialization. And why European can industrialize? Well, because this growth in wealth and people. And why Europeans have the ability to achieve the wealth growth? Because they accumulate money from Colombian exchange. So good enough. I will start from this point to use that as my contextualization. Right. So I said during the age of exploration, right? Europeans initially established a Colombian exchange, right, with native Indians, right? And that enriched the European states, right? And then it started from this point. At the same time, the food brought in from America witnessed the population growth in Europe, right? With the wealth and the enlarged labor force, right? No, we need to introduce capitalism, right? And that enrich that also lead to a new social elites known as the gentry class, okay, emerge in the Europe, right? And then with the new social elites, right, Europeans transform from mercantilism into capitalism economic system, right? And then with the enlarged labor force, right, new economic system, European were able to adopt this industrialization, right? And the greatest achievement or invention during industrialization era was the railroad system, right? Or railroad construction or building, whatever you want to say. And then you can start to argue why railroad is so important, right? And then you find a transition phrase to link your thesis. And then you took care of your opening paragraph, all right? So these two together compose your opening paragraph, all right? Thesis along with contextualization together is your opening paragraph, all right? Opening. Right. So if you went through this process for yesterday's homework, then you're already there. You know how to work on DPQ. I see some of your homework from yesterday. In your opening, you already incorporate with documents. You don't have to. You save the document in your body paragraph. That we will talk about how to, systematic compose our body paragraph next time. But today we focus on how we come up with thesis, how we come up with contextualization. Okay, so the process for this argument essay for DBQ is a little bit different. For LEQ, we started with what? Thesis and try to figure out argument. And then later on, we try to locate evidence, right? But for DBQ, we'll go backwards. We have evidence first, and then we can have arguments, and then we have thesis. That makes sense? All right, so that is our DBQ, all right? So today we talk about DBQ, actually, not just the contextualization and thesis. We actually talk about what? Grouping already. We talk about sourcing already. We talk about complexity already. So you should be able to work on homework Unit 7, not Unit 7, we use the same prompt, okay? You can work on the homework for grouping, sourcing, and complexity, all right? So questions about how to handle DPQ? No? If not, okay, let's take a break and we'll come back, we'll move on today's agenda. Other than DPQ, we gonna move on to World War I. Okay, we are in period 4 now. Okay, so let's take 10 and come back. We will start to talk about World War I. Right? I'm gonna show you not a map. Okay, this is the map before World War I, but we're gonna talk about cost of World War I. Okay, and why the World War I is known as the Great War. Right, so I'm gonna leave this slide on. So if you wanna read it beforehand, go ahead, and we'll come back in 10 minutes. All right, I'm gonna mute myself. All right, let's come back. If we're back, tap one, please. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Hey. All right. All right. So everybody's back. So let's begin. Now, we're now in period 4, global conflicts, right? The global conflicts at the in the beginning of the 20th century, definitely it's what World War I, right? So we're gonna talk about what caused World War I, all right? So if we want to analyze what lead to, because war is about cause effect, right? Anybody heard of this acronym called MANIA? MANIA. It's an acronym. Okay, it stands for 5 words. MANIA. So this is how you remember the cause of World War I, right? So here we have M. Excuse me. M is militarism. Militarism, right? Meaning what? Because of the industrialization that enable Europeans to mass produce pretty much everything, right? And Europeans also adopt this industrialization in their military force. All right, hey, welcome back, right? So militarism, it's when Europeans applied their advanced technology, okay, and invention, everything into military force. So you will see during World War I, new form of weapon was introduced in the battlefield, like what? Machine gun, right? Tank, right? And poison gas, right? And barbed wired, right? Telegraph, right? All these are new invention that derive from industrialization, and European states make sure all this know-how technology is applied onto their military building, right? And to a point, Europeans, each one of them, had a strong faith in their military power. All right, that's why when World War I took place, it was Germany, right? German soldiers started this initial attack, right? They mobilized German soldiers and sent them to Paris on railroad, right? And these German soldiers, upon their departure, they said to their families, members, or friends, or lovers, and say, "Wait for me. I'll be home. I won't be gone too long. I'll be home for Christmas." Because every member states here that involved in World War I, they all believe that this will be very quick war, because with all these advanced weapons, right, the war will be just like that. You can eliminate your enemy, okay, in days, okay, or weeks, right? So this is militarism. And the first A stands for alliances. Alliances is what? Is what? Alliances. So European have a very weird belief that the best situation condition for the entire Europe is no single European state rise to dominant power. That's the best. So check and balance. But at the same time, every European state, they want to rise up to power and dominating Europe. Okay, it's a paradox. And then in this case, in order to avoid a single power state in Europe, they would have secret alliances. All right, like if I'm being attacked, right, or being threatened, I need someone to back me up, right? So they started to form this alliances network. That's why it did not cause the World War I, but it kind of amplified the scale of World War I, right? So at the beginning was only the conflicts between Austria and Serbia, right? So it could be controlled to like, only it could be controlled into a regional conflict, but no, because of these alliances, right? So I have your back. Don't worry. Go ahead. Okay, and then that escalate into this European war, right? But Europeans, when they confront with each other, they don't just fight each other on European land. They attack each other's colonies worldwide. And Europeans, they have Africa, they have a Southeast Asia. They still have some control in the Caribbean Sea. So everywhere you can see current European colonies. So that's why this regional conflicts between Austria and Serbia turn into a world war, right? So alliances. And then N stands for nationalism. All right. So we talk about nationalism, possible outcome in two ways, right? One is independence, the other one is unification, right? Okay. And this nationalism actually explains this assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, right? When he visited Serbia, and then he tried to show, the glory of this Austrian Empire, right? And that lead to Serbians, plan to assassinate Archduke, right? And that trigger this, global conflicts, right? And I, be careful, this I is not industrialization. Industrialization would be your contextualization to explain World War I, okay? And I here is imperialism. Imperialism. So the desire to build up their empire worldwide, right? That lead to the conflicts, not just within the European continent, but also the colonies in the world. Each one of them want to compete, against each other, because the more colonies you have, the more nature resources you can obtain. And so what? So this nature resource can, in terms, further improve your industrialization scale, right? So every European state at that time had their ambition, right, to rise up like superpower in the world. So imperialism lead to this conflicts of World War One, right? And A would be like the last straw that crushed the camel. It would be the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, right, and his wife Sophia, right? So if you want to explain the causes that lead to total war, World War One, this is the causes, all right? Mania, right? So the conflict itself started with the assassination, right? So that's the last straw of the Austrian Archduke Ferdinand, right? And who did that? The members of the Black Hand of Serbia. Why did they do so? Nationalism, right? They don't want to be under Austrians' control. Okay, they believe they are not the same people, right? So Austria declared war on Serbia, right? So Serbia, who are they? They are a Slavic nation. So of course, see, alliances. They have their allies, whom? Russia, because they're also Slavic, right? And then declare war on Austria and trigger the line system, right? So we have the nationalism to assassinate Ferdinand because of alliances that lead to this line system, right? So become a world war, right? So like we said, both sides anticipate a quick, glorious national conflicts, right? A quick, glorious national conflicts. So they are fighting on behalf of their nation, their identity. They feel so proud. It's a glory. Similar to what? To the age of exploration, right? 3G. Remember 3G? God, gold, glory. Right, so you're fighting for your mighty empire, mother country, right? So if you can defeat, this any, the enemies, it's a what? It's a glory that you will carve on your tombstone, right? And they soon realized warfare had changed, right? Because everybody's power of a military force advanced, right? Improved. So to a point that there become a gridlock, right? No one can, take down the other, just like that. So one thing that changed about warfare was how it was founded and supplied. Okay, the reason we call World War I total war is what? This is the first time you see the whole nation, whole state, they are being devoted into the war. Okay, how? First of all, the war is financed by the government. That's the same, right? All wars are financed by the government, pretty much. But this time, the government even took over the economy. Don't forget, Europeans at this time, they practice capitalism, right? Capitalism is what? Laissez-faire. Remember Adam Smith, right? Laissez-faire, free market, invisible hand, right? So government and guild should what? Should yield, right? Let the market play their own game, right? But no, now it's wartime, right? This capitalism is dangerous because the government want to make sure these men fighting in the front line, they're supported with necessary supplies, right? So in order to produce this wartime supply, the government took over the economy, and the government would decide how to utilize the resource. So if you are in textile business and your business line is for consumers, right? So like a school uniform, okay, or like fashion business, sorry, you cannot shut down, or you work for the government, right? You don't produce like fashion clothes, because we don't need fashion at this point. We need what? Uniform for the soldiers, right? So that's how the government took over the economy and decide how to utilize the resource they have available, right? And because of that, you see, government control the economy, and the households and individual, okay, in the society, they started to be affected, right? So people actually support this war because nationalism, right? So families, they're willing to cut off their luxury consumption. They are willing to just degrade it into like all this essential needs, right? So no more like a steak, as long as we're potato good enough, right? And we don't need fancy clothes, as long as we can keep ourselves warm good enough, right? So the whole society, in this case, they are actually involved in the war, one way or another, directly or indirectly, right? So we have the families, okay, willing to sacrifice the standard of the life, right? And we have these factories. They're either being like a kind of controlled, okay, temporary borrowed, okay, from the government, all right, to produce something else, okay? And we also have this women begin to participate in the labor force. Why? Because men, able men, they are now in the front line fighting for your country, right? So women say, don't worry, we have your back, right? So women participate in this labor force, and what do they produce? Weapons, right? See the photo right here? Women producing weapons. These are what, bullets, right? And at the same time, it's a total war, and everybody was involved, okay, because the government utilized the strategy called propaganda, okay, to provoke this nationalism, this hatred towards the enemies, right? And all this kind of strategy policies were not there before. Just think about what Europeans 30 years war, that was pretty large scale already, right? But common household and individual, they don't sense it. They don't sense there's a war. Their life was pretty much normal. But World War I, everybody's life is affected one way or another, right? So in this case, that's why we call it total war, never before, all right? So propaganda, let me show you some propaganda from that time. This is propaganda. This is a US Army, right? So destroy this bad brute, right? Do you want this enemy, this maniac, okay, come to your territory, your home? And who's that? America, right? So this represents America, right? So enlist now. Another one is this. Will you fight now or wait for this? If you don't fight now, okay, you think it's none of your business, but just wait till you lose all your allies, possible potential allies. Now you are all alone. You are the final target. So will you fight now or wait for this? So this propaganda, to a very large extent, all right, really provoke this nationalism. All right, really provoke this nationalism. All right. So this hatred, towards each other. And how come the war being dragged to so long? Mainly because new type of war was invented. It's called the trench warfare. Okay, so trench warfare. Let me show you this trench first. Okay, this is a French trench. Can you imagine that? Being one of the soldier and you spend 4 or 5 years in this trench. Okay, very bad, living condition. And soldiers, they would, sleep in the trench, eat in the trench, right? And this war is going nowhere. All right. So between the trench, this is French trench, right? We have British trench right here. All right. So you will have like a both player in this open field. They dig this trench, so it will be like a nature fort, right? And they would the other player would have like their trench, perhaps 2-3 kilometers away. So between these two trench, this is called what? The open zone, no man's zone, right? So what they do is they try to raid the other trench, right? And if they could force the trench, the enemy's trench to move backwards, and you can push your front line, a little bit. But normally it's like a month or two, you probably push your front line by a foot. Okay, so that's why it's taking so long. That's a trench war, right? So logic, right? Germany planned invasion of France, right? It's called the Schlieffen plan through Belgium. That nearly got them to Paris, right? So why? Let's see the map. So Germany has the border, right? Share border with France. That's Germany Empire. This is France. So they do have border right here. So this border, okay, it's like a fortified. So French army, they guard this borderline. So for Germany to invade France through this borderline, it's gonna be a tough battle. But France also share borderline with Belgium, right? And Belgium is neutral, okay, and it's not an enemy to France. So basically, this borderline between Belgium and France was like an unfortified, so it's a soft border, right? So for Germany, it's like if we can just cut across Belgium, then we don't have to worry about this confrontation from French soldiers when we try to cross the border, right? So that sounds pretty ideal. Actually, Germany did. But the problem is Belgium, okay, has Britain on its back, all right? So Britain, back to the late 19th century, already recognized Belgium's neutrality. So Belgium declared that doesn't matter what conflicts Europeans may, find themselves engaged with, all right? Belgium is always the neutral ground, okay? So Germany wanna, march across Belgium so they can have an easy access to enter France territory, right? They's gonna go through Belgium, but Belgium is neutral, right? So Germany actually tried to ask Britain's permission, but Britain said no. But Germany didn't care, and it just went ahead anyway. So that provoked Britain as well. So Britain declared war upon Germany, right, later on. Okay, so wait. So this would be the Schlieffen plan, because Germany, if you look at the two parties right back here, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and Ottoman Empire, they are the central power, right? And the rest in green, in what color is that? Orange. That would be the triple entity, right? So if you look at this map, you see Germany is actually confronted from both sides, right? To the east, they have Russia, they need to deal with, and to the west, they need to take down France, right? So to Germany's like, there's no way they can open two battlefields at the same time. So you will undermine your military force, right? So Germany's plan is that which one is an easy target? Well, France is, right? So Germany's plan is they will go through Belgium and invade France and take down Paris, and right away they will circle back and then mobilize their troops to confront Russia. And Germany believe it is doable because they are so proud of their advanced weapons, everything. Okay, but once they arrive in Paris, they're stuck right here. Why? Trench war. All right. So Germans Schlieffen plan did not work. All right. So it became a very miserable war. Okay. And the innovation here. So one of the unforeseen consequences of the industry warfare was how modern weapons, right, vastly increase human casualty, right? Like what? Barbed wire. You know barbed wire, right? You see that in the farming zone, okay? Machine guns, tanks, artillery, poison gas. You look at how the soldiers there equipped with this mask. So the mask is there, even a horse. That's the horse, donkey, right? So the mask is supposed to protect the soldiers from this poison gas attack. Okay. And then so both sides thought it would be quick, but we know history now, right? It's not. It's wait a second. 14 to 1954, 5 years, right? So it turned into an endless, futile struggle, right? And all this loss due to this war, right? And sickness, right? Injury, lack of food, right? That everything is like miserable. So on the Western front, it's like, man, when is this war going to end, right? So to the east from Russia surrendered to Germany in 1917. Okay, so Russia actually took care of, Germany actually took care of Russia in 1917 through their strategy. They locate Lenin. Okay, Lenin tried to overthrow the Tsar, but he failed and he was exiled to Europe. And Germany managed to locate Lenin and offer Lenin this one-time opportunity, saying that German government would, number one, financially and militarily support Lenin's revolution. And Germany also agreed to send Lenin back to Russia secretly through the railroad. And then what's the catch? So to Lenin is like, what's the catch? Why you wanna help me, right? To overthrow my own czar. And Germany was like, easy. After you return, right? After you overthrow your czar, you need to surrender to us. So we don't have to worry about the East end anymore. So Lenin is like, sure, why not, right? My goal is to reform, to overthrow the Russian czar and build the communist society. So surrender to you, no problem. Okay, so that's how Germany managed to secure the eastern border. Okay, and focus on the West, right? So remember how these soldiers, they feel so proud to fight on behavior of their country, right? So this idea of glory and comeback dissolved. So the hope is gone. So once this trench warfare settled in there for like more than four years, can you imagine that? Also, this trench war drained France, Britain, Germany of their nature resource, right? The entire generation of young men as well. Okay. So the casualty, the death soul, due to the World War I is beyond imagination, right? So the war really shocked the world, okay? Because people could never imagine, war can cause this kind of, destruction. So after the World War I, people started to lose their faith. Why? Because if you compare before and after World War I, before World War I, what do we have in Europe at that time? Proud, right? So their pride and their national identity and celebration of this never before prosperity, right? So that kind of create this vibe, this atmosphere as I got. The future will continue to be so ideal, right? That's mainly because of industrialization, all right, and capitalism, right? So after the war, the people was like in awe with all this destruction and the soul that lost due to the war, right? Why? Industrialization. Because of industrialization that advanced the weapon, and that's why we have such a great number of death casualty, right? So the very same generation before the war, okay, before the war, everybody celebrate industrialization, right? And then after the war, everybody was like, being the victim one way or another of industrialization. So this generation didn't know what else to believe anymore. So they were known as the lost generation. Okay, so they started to question, is this industrialization a bless or a curse? So that's why they are known as the lost generation, right? All right, so that's World War One. So World War One, we have, this dark history from World War One as well. It's called genocide and disease. Okay, when we talk about genocide, the first thing we pop out into the mind is probably concentration camp during World War II, how Nazi Hitler, right, target the Jewish community. But actually in World War One, we already have that. What? Armenian. So one member state of this Central Power is Ottoman Empire, right? Ottoman Empire is a Turkish Islamic state, right? And Ottoman, they already had their own internal problem, which is the Balkans, right? So the Balkans, all these Slav people, they are Eastern Orthodox believer, and Islam is what, Ottoman is what, Islamic state, right? So in this case, what is it? In this case, Ottoman, initially they did not want to participate in this war, right? But later on, they have no choice because Britain tried to persuade Ottoman, okay, to side with Britain and join the triple entities, right? Ententes. Why? Let's take a look. Because United Kingdom tried to persuade Ottoman to join this three entente, the triple entente, right? If Ottoman really joined the triple entente, they could block Russians' southern border, right? And the entente, they can march their their army to Ottoman and invaded Russia from south, right? The Ottoman was like, nah, I don't think so, right? So the Ottoman was like debating between siding with the UK or siding with Germany, right? But eventually decided with the UK, right? So that means what? Now Romania, Russia is the enemy of Ottoman Empire, right? So Russia started to march south. That's before 1917, right? March down south, okay, targeting this new enemy, right? Because the Ottomans decided to side with Germany, right? So when Russia started to march down south, Turkey tried to avoid unnecessary internal issue, right? Those Slavic community, right? So he started to target Armenians because Armenians is one of this most threatening rebels to Ottoman Empire, right? So to avoid this unnecessary internal challenge, Ottoman decided to take the first move and killed somewhere between 1.5 million to 2 million Armenians. That's known as Armenian genocide. That already took place in World War One. Okay, almost 2 million Armenians died. Okay, and the disease during World War One that's even make this whole war worse, right? It's called Spanish flu. So Spanish flu started to spread widely in 1917, and that will infect more than quarter of the world, quarter, right? And Spanish flu, on top of the casualty due to the warfare, right? The Spanish flu actually killed roughly around 40 million people. And especially its young generation, 20 to 40. Why? Because they're fighting in the front line. And flu is what contagious, right? And just look at how this, condition is. If one soldier caught the flu, and pretty much the entire platoon is gone, right? And the death rate is also very high, right, for Spanish flu. But now we have vaccine, right? So if you take annual flu shot, you probably don't have to worry that much, right? So that's the disease of Spanish flu. And then let's talk about the impact of war, right? So the impact war was what? The war ended with the signing of Treaty of Versailles, right? And that was the peace treaty, okay? When Germany, not really like a surrender, okay? Germany could continue fighting, but they're exhausted and they did not see the end of it, right? They just want to, stop, okay, enough, 5 years, right? So Germany proposed this peace treaty, right? So since it's Germany proposed the peace treaty, so they would be considered as the losing party, right? And then the winning party would be the Triple Entente, right? So France, Britain, America, Russia, not anymore. They surrendered to Germany already, right? So they came to Versailles, right? And they have different interests in mind. France and Britain, their agenda is to seek for reparation. Okay, so why? Because war, they are so costly, right? And the destruction to their society is huge. So France and Britain, they're seeking for reparation. They try to get as much as they can from Germany to make up the loss, okay, due to the war. But Woodrow Wilson, representing America, on the other hand, had a different agenda, though, because this war to America was not so destructive, because America did not join the war until 1917, right? And that's mainly because Germany tried to provoke Mexico to attack America. Okay, so America declared war upon Japan. I mean, not Japan, Germany. All right. So Woodrow Wilson came to Versailles with this goal to figure out a system, a way to maintain world peace, okay, and try to avoid another war like this scale from happening. All right. So he actually proposed his 14 points, but the most important 2 points is, number one, suggest the formation of a League of Nations. So that would be a supranational organization. All right. Supranational means it involves various states as their member states, right? And you need a membership in order to enjoy the benefit of this organization, right? Also, he proposed self-determination. Self-determination, meaning what? The trigger to World War I is the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, right? And that's because Austria tried to annex all these Slavic people, right, into their empire, right? And that provoked this nationalism reaction, right? So according to Woodrow Wilson, he believed that let's respect people's own wish, their desire, okay? Let's have the people to determine whether or not they want to remain in your empire or they want to establish their own state. That's called self-determination. So if we establish this common ground, and then we can avoid another war, right? The war is still because of these conflicts, right? One empire want to annex the other small state, and the small state said, no, we're not your people, right? So self-determination seems like an ideal solution, okay, to this potential threats, right? And eventually, Woodrow Wilson found his way to incorporate this League of Nations in the Treaty of Versailles. But ironically, America did not join this League of Nations though, because of the Senate belief, join this League of Nations would not benefit America. Instead, it's gonna drag America into this endless European conflicts. All right, so America might as well just remain isolated from Europe, because Europe was where all these conflicts originated from. Right, so Treaty of Paris was eventually signed, and there's one article that Woodrow Wilson would sort of like disagree, but he compromised anyway, because the other member states adopt his proposal of League of Nations, right? So what article that Woodrow Wilson really had a problem with? It was the article that demand Germany to assume all the war guilt. All right. And to Woodrow Wilson said, no, when there is a war, okay, there's no single party's fault. It's always what did whoever participate, all right? But for the establishment of League of Nations, Woodrow Wilson compromised and signed on the treaty. So Germany had to assume the war guilt. Also pay 132 billion German mark as reparation to the triple ententes, right? So that's the this is the impact of the war, right? So this is Europe in 1914. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 major empires gone. If you compare that, 1919, right? So this is 1914. We have Russian Empire, German Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Ottoman Empire, right? But at the end of World War I, you see Russian Empire gone. It become USSR, right? And then German Empire shrink, right? And their emperor abdicated as well. So German's empire, they lost most of Eastland, and then Poland claimed their independence, okay, from Germany and established their own state. All right, and Austro-Hungarian gone. It's become Austria, Hungary, and other, like Czechoslovakia, right? Romania, Yugoslavia, right? Bulgaria is already there. And Ottoman Empire now become Republic of Turkey. So this is the impact of World War I. So World War I redraw European map. Okay, so new version of European map was drawn, right? So that's the end of World War I. So with that in mind, we can move on to the concept called end of land empires. End of land empires. So remember, land empire, Islamic empire, right? So we have Ottoman, Safavid, Mughal. Also in the Far East, we have Qing dynasty, right? These four known as the end, known as the land empire, right? So in this case, we have the end of land empire. Why? Because Islamic empire gone, right? Qing dynasty gone, right? Well, Qing dynasty actually ended before World War I. It ended in 1911, right? When Sun Yat-sen, his revolutionary army, invaded Beijing and forced the last emperor to abdicate, right? So that's the end of Qing. So let's talk about Ottoman. Ottoman Empire. This empire actually ended during the war. When? 1918, right? 1917, actually. So let's see. Primary power and threat to Europeans through this time period, right? That was Ottoman Empire, right? Remember the land-based empire rise, right? After the fall of Mongolian Empire, Islamic Empire rise again, right? And Ottoman Empire, to a point, even undertaken Byzantine Empire, right? But now their golden age is gone. So Ottoman Empire declined into irrelevancy in 19th century. To a point, Europeans actually gave Ottoman Empire a nickname, the sick bin, of Europe, the segment of Europe. They used to be the dominant state, right? Land-based empire, but not anymore. All right. Why? Can anybody think of a reason why Ottoman Empire lose their power and gradually decline into irrelevancy? They used to be so powerful. So what happened? Anybody? What happened to Ottoman that they had to surrender their dominating power to the Western Europe? Anyone? The end of empire. Possible reasons. Think about that. Lucas?
I don't know. The world, the war had like a really big toll on them or something.
No. Before the war.
Oh.
Yeah. What lead to this decline of this once powerful land-based empire, Ottoman? Yes, Sunny.
I think Ottoman Empire can't keep up with the times.
Now what?
They can't keep up with the times.
I don't follow. I'm sorry.
Like
Uh-huh. Oh, how come you disappeared? Okay. If you could, can you type? So I will better understand. Okay. Your argument. So Ottoman Empire used to be so powerful, right? Dominating the Silk Road trade and control control this Balgans, right? Balgans, they were Eastern Orthodox, right? So what happened? Well, they had their moment that was 1453, right? Mid 15th century. That time was way before industrialization, and world economy was still under this agricultural system, right? So agriculture, of course, manufacturing as well, right? But no machinization, meaning what? The major labor force is still rely heavily upon manpower. So whichever state they can secure, yes. Okay, thank you, Sunny, right? So that economy was rely heavily upon agriculture in the 19th century in Ottoman Empire, right? Because they believe not that long ago, right? 15th century, Ottoman could rely on agriculture and claim their dominance power in the Minor Asia, right? So they could still keep it working and not really like a try to industrialize, right? And that create the chance for European to catch up and to a point even surpass the power of Ottoman Empire. Similar logic applied to Qing dynasty, right? Qing dynasty believed that this system, agriculture, paired with Confucianism society, had been working ever since Han, right? And starting from Sui dynasty, China was never being divided again, right? So this system worked. So we continued to adopt this system, but they did not notice that the world was changing that time. All right. Anyway, so Ottoman depended almost entirely on the military conquest and agriculture for its economy, right? So when it could no longer gain territory, remember the Vietnam's siege, Ottoman Empire actually tried to invade Western Europe, but they lost the battle in Vietnam twice. So they kind of, okay, so it's settled then. This is our empire, right? So when there's no more land for them to conquer, and they it actually tried to industrialize, but it lost its source of wealth already. Too late, right? Too late, too little. But with Germany and its allies defeated by 1918, right? So Ottoman Empire would be dismantled, and the Sultan was actually like removed, all right? And Ottoman Empire became a constitutional republic in 1922. but they still show respect to this sultan. That's a historical photo though. That was the sultan, and he was being removed, right? And people still show respect to him though, right? So former territory dismantled as well, right? And so the major power in this Ottoman Empire is Turkey, and that's what we have today, Republic of Turkey, right? And then Britain and France in the League of Nations, they actually exercise this mandate system. Okay, mandate system is what? Despite Woodrow Wilson's proposal of a self-determination, right, to prevent, you know, this kind of war from happening again, but the Allies, okay, France and Britain, okay, they trying so hard to get, you know, whatever nature resource they can to pay for their war debts, right? So even Woodrow Wilson believed self-determination is the only way to keep the world peace, but Britain and France refused to do so, including Japan as well. They insist on exercising this mandate system. Mandate is what? Take over Germany. No, yeah, take over German Ottoman Empire's previous colonies under their own control. That's called mandate system, all right? So by controlling the colonies, the central powers used to govern, that would bring nature resource to Britain and France, right? So that's the mandate system, right? So loss of land base at the end of land-based empire. First, we talk about Islam. That's Ottoman. Now let's talk about China. Qing, recognize him? The founding father of China, right? So Qing dynasty. When it comes to 1911, right? So Qing dynasty suffered defeat after defeat, starting from this Opium War, right? And then this Nanjing Treaty, Beijing Treaty, you name it, right? So to a point, the Qing government started to lose their mandate of heaven, right? And people, I mean Chinese society, started to rebel, right? But not until Sun Yat-sen, right? He made his 11th attempt. He failed the first 10, and he succeeded in the 11th revolution. Okay, try to come back against Qing government, right? So Qing's fall from power in East Asia actually kind of encouraged the rise of Japan, right, and Russia try to invade China, right? So this actually marked the end of 2,000 years of sole dominance in Asia. Remember, China used to be known as Middle Kingdom before the fall of Qing dynasty, right? And all this neighboring state, they pay tribute to China, right? And try to learn from China in all ways they could, right? And then the fall of Qing dynasty really end this whole situation. And the Han people feel that Manchu had lost the mandate of heaven, right? So they needed a leader, okay, to guide this revolutionary army. And here came the leader, Sun Yat-sen, right? And others, of course. They led this revolt, and eventually they overthrown the Qing dynasty in 1911, right? And established a Western constitutional republic, and that's known as Republic of China, right? So Qing abdicated peacefully in 1912, and the constitutional government actually was pretty nice to the Qing royal family. Initially, they still allow this royal family to continue to live in the Forbidden City, right? Just, you know, they no longer possess the political power, and whatever, you know, court ritual they wish to help to hold, they have the freedom to do so. And on top of that, the constitutional government would dole out, you know, budget for the royal family as their allowance, right? So but after this abdicate of Qing's emperor Puyi, right, there would be a civil war between these regional warlords, right? So all of a sudden, this central government that existing for 2,000 years from dynasty to dynasty, right? Gone. So a new form of government called republican was established. But the entire Chinese society was like, we don't know what is republican, right? So people started to show ambition to claim power, because this is the moment if you really want to, rise up and secure the power. That's the timing, all right? So you see this warlords started to postpone, and that was postponed by Japanese invasion in 1937. So without the Japanese invasion, very likely China that time could ended up with this divided kingdom, all right, governed by various warlords. But when Japan invaded China, right? So now Chinese society, despite their differences, despite their ambition to claim their own kingdom, they now are facing the same enemy, Japan. So they reunited, right? So this Japanese invasion started from 1937 and all the way till the end of World War II in 1945, right? So this civil war, okay, was paused during this war against Japan. But once Japan surrendered, okay, civil war began again, right? So that's Qing dynasty ended because of the loss of mandate of habit, and of course you can argue the corruption within Qing royal family court, right? Russia Empire also gone, right? And that happened in 1917. Okay, so through various revolution. Okay, so let's see why Russia gradually lose the legitimacy from its people. Okay, Qing government we know is because Qing lost all the wars to European alliances, right? And then what happened to Russia? Well, Russia first of all tried to industrialize, but just like Ottoman, all right, too late, too little. And the economy was not ideal, right? Because Russia still rely on this agriculture, okay, economic system. So when economy was bad, people's anger started to surge, right? And Russian Tsar believed he need to bring in some kind of glory or like a victory to cheer up the society, right? In that case, he actually engaged a war in 1905 with Japan over Chinese territory in the northeast, right? So this is known as the Russo-Japanese War. So when the war happened, our world actually believed that Russia should have won the war, right? Because Japan used to be so irrelevant, right? For centuries, Japan was living under this isolated, self-sufficient lifestyle, separate itself from the rest of the world, right? To prevent this cultural invasion. But after World War One, okay, after World War One, things changed. Japan believed if Britain could establish an empire that the sun never sets, all right, Japan could do so as well. Why? Because Japan, during World War One, Japan was a member state of this Triple Entente, right? So that should be sided with Britain, France, and America, right? But at the Treaty of Versailles Convention, okay, this meeting, Japanese delegates was like being discriminated upon, even though Japan was a member state in this Triple Entente, right? But France, Britain, and even America, they have this white superiority, right? So they did not really view Japan as part of their community. And Japanese delegates had this language barrier as well. So they need to rely on translator, right? But when you need translator to deliver your idea, it loses the efficiency already, right? So as a result, the Japanese delegates throughout the convention in Versailles was pretty much ignored. So sitting at a corner, nobody want to talk to him. And because of France, England, and Britain, France, and America, they were busy dealing with each other to come up the finalized Treaty of Versailles, right? So this humiliation kind of provoked the entire Japanese society. So when this delegates, they actually left the meeting in the middle. They did not sit all the way through to the end. So when the Japanese delegate returned to Japan, they started to plan this imperialism policy and try to turn Japan into a super powerful state in Asia, so they can prove to the West, okay, Asian is also, you know, strong and powerful, right? So, when the war was introduced to this Russia-Japanese war, pretty much all states, okay, that believe Russia should have won this war, because Japan, they're just, you know, irrelevant in the past, right? But this time, Japan actually defeated Russia. So to Russian Tsar, it's a big humiliation. Such a great empire lost the war to this tiny island, all right? So the Tsar Nicholas II, all right, of course, started to lose his legitimacy, right? The Russian society is like started to appear with this desire to overthrow the Tsar. And Nicholas II, smart emperor, okay, they knew, okay, at this point he need to compromise. So he was willing to reduce its own power and allow the public to create a parliament, Congress, known as Duma. This institution still exists as of today. Okay, so when you see Duma, that's the term for Russian parliament or Congress, right? So the Tsar did retain his position, right? But this humiliation defeat to Germany in 1917, right? World War I. And that spelled the end of the Tsarist government, all right? So Tsar was no longer in charge. So first, the Tsar, the royal family was just, you know, removed from their throne, right? No longer powerful. But later on, the provisional government believed as long as the Tsar is still there, there's no way Russian can really achieve their new government plan, communism, right? So in this case, they decided to execute the Nicholas family, okay? And that lead to this big shock, okay, to the entire world. It's like, wow, Louis XVI was beheaded, but his family was actually spared. Not his wife though, okay? His relatives, everything was spared, okay? But the Tsar family was like, no, genocide, spare no one, okay? Anywho, so this is the revolution in 1917, right? So they first overthrown the Tsar, okay, strip his political power, okay, to zero, and then they decided to execute the royal family, all right? So now the Russian need a new government, right? That would be the provisional government. Okay, remember Lenin? With the help of German government, he was able to return to Russia and took down Tsar, right? And then after that, the provisional government was established, right? But according to the agreement between German government and Lenin, Russia was supposed to surrender to Germany, right? But the provisional government believed, no, that's not the best interest for Russia. So they continue to fight in World War I, hoping to gain something through this war, okay? So to a point, Lenin was like a fed up, okay? And the Russian society was also fed up. So they overthrown this provisional government and what? And replaced with Lenin's Soviet Union, right? So that's the year 1917 that Soviet Union surrendered to Germany, all right? And then this is known as this Bolshevik revolution, because Lenin organized this political party called Bolshevik. So he overthrown the provisional government, and that's why it's called Bolshevik Revolution, right? And that end the Russian Empire, right? So here we have 1, 2, 3, three land-based empire ended, either during the war or right after the war or before the war, right? So before the war is Qing dynasty. During the war would be what? Russia, right? And right after the war would be what? Ottoman Empire, all right? Okay, now let's talk about interwar, right? Interwar, you see the rise of USSR and the rise of fascism, right? So USSR at first was Lenin's communist party, this Bolshevik party in charge, right? But when Lenin died, Stalin took over control, and that started this reign of terror sort, right? And his massacre targeting his opponents, right? And in Germany, okay, Germany supposedly was like, under this high, strong monitor by the Entente, right? Through this Treaty of Versailles. So Germany was not supposed to possess military scale more than 100,000 men. Okay, so the Treaty of Versailles limited Germany's military power. So to a point, the 100,000 men could only play defense role. So Germany would never have the power or strength to start another war like World War I. But they did not see that Hitler would make a big change by advocating this nationalism, okay, the superiority of the Aryans, right? And he tried to build up this third German Empire, the Third Reich, right? Who remember the first and second? What is the first German Empire? And the second one, prior to the one Hitler was intending to build, the Third Reich. Yes, Jason.
The first one was the Holy Roman Empire,
Yes.
and the second one was the German Empire, which was forged by Bismarck,
Very good.
which was the
Bismarck,
one
yes.
that was destroyed in World War I.
Very good, very good. Yes, yes, yes. So first German Empire was the Holy Roman Empire, right? Dismantled by Napoleon War, right? And then second was the German unification, and the third was Hitler's Third Reich, right? So Russian Revolution, we'll talk about that, right? So when Lenin took over, then we have this new economic policy, right? So when Lenin was in charge, he developed this new economic, well, he first practiced this communism. We talked about communism before, right? And then communism is like, government in charge of everything, command planned economy, right? And it turned out to be a failure, because we know the problem of communism is the lack of incentive, right? And to a point, it can lead to this free riders phenomena, right? So the whole productivity in Russia declined. So Lenin, good thing about Lenin is he recognized his own mistake, and he will come to a, he will be devoted to find a solution to fix his mistake. So he actually have a new economic policy in 1921. So he started to allow these farmers to sell excess grain, right? And factories competed for rewards based on production, right? So there's an incentive now. He did not really change from communism back to the capitalism, no. But at least he's adopting some sort of capitalism ideology, right? So allow this, private property, which is strongly argued against, according to Karl Marx, right? So Marx believed that the concept of owning private property is the reason that we have the social class, and that's the reason why we have a social conflicts, right? And if you want to adopt true communism, no private property. But Lenin believed that going this extreme, already proved that it's a big mistake. So he started to adopt a capitalist idea, all right? And then this actually provoked this, this true communists, right? they started to question why Lenin did so, right? Isn't our goal to build a utopian communist society? So he started to have people questioning him, right? But he did anyway, and proved to be a working policy. So gradually, Russia's economy started to recover, but he died young. Okay, so when Lenin died, right, he did not really appoint a successor, but Joseph Stalin managed to win over this political game. He actually showed a photo that he had together with Lenin and sitting at on a bench. Right, looks like they're discussing something important, and he used that as evidence, saying that Lenin already appoint him, okay, choose him to be his successor. So he's assumed the power, right, in 1924, because Lenin died in 1924, right? And then it marched into this Joseph Stalin era. Okay, and he go back to this communist society, this ideology, all right? So he removed Lenin relatively successful new economic policy, right? He did. And he in favor of this agricultural collectivization, that's communal working, right? And we already know this is gonna lead to free rider, right? And when his policy failed, unlike Lenin will try to figure out what happened that it failed, right? And try to make a amendment or change, right? But when when Stalin's policy failed, he did not think in that way. He started to point finger at this scapegoat, and he blamed the oppressive upper class, the kulaks. So this upper class, they actually achieved their wealth and their fortune during this new economic policy, right? And then Lenin said, it's because of you, the kulaks, in a way. So that's why my policy failed. So he started to adopt this policy called de-kulakization. So he wants to eliminate all these kulaks. First, restrict their power, their wealth, and to a point they just send this kulaks to the work camp in Siberia. Siberia, it could be 40 degrees sub-zero Celsius, right? Not a normal human being can survive under that kind of extreme weather. All right. So when this kulak, they're being exiled to Siberia, that's pretty much the end. And Stalin successfully eliminate one of his opponents, and he continued to use this kind of approach to eliminate even more of his opponents. All right. So that's Stalin's policy. All right. So during his reign, he actually was responsible for millions of lives. All right. So World War I already claimed the big portion of the population from Russia, and Stalin further, kill his own people, as long as they disagree with him. Right. Okay, let's stop here for today. So your job today is to do this grouping. All right, so we did document 1 and 2 together. You can do it in your own way again if you want to. All right, so your job today is use the same prompt and group these 7 documents into 2 or 3 groups, and based on this grouping, you need to come up with a topic sentence. Okay, come up with a topic sentence, and then you can change your thesis statement if you want. All right, so change your thesis statement, change your contextualization, and work on the document grouping, and work on the topic sentence. That's all you need today. All right, you do not need to write a complete body paragraph. No, you just need to group documents and come up with arguments to support your thesis. All right, that's your homework today using the same prompt. All right, any questions? I don't see any hands. I assume that's a no. All right. So in that case, you guys have a nice evening. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Okay. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Bye.
老师，你还在
哎
吗？你能帮
在
Nicolette 那个稍微帮他看一下，给一些 comments 吗？他妈妈一直在催我。
等一下，等一下，
嗯，
等一下，
好的好的，嗯，
好好。
好，
哎，
拜拜。
请问一下，小麦是谁？
应该是，诶，
啊，你好，我是 Lucas 的妈妈。
啊？
我是 Lucas 的妈妈。
哎，
我
你好，你好。
我只听一下，我只是旁听一下。
OK。
不
All
好意
right,
思，
right,
老师。
right. Okay, no
嗯
problem. Okay, 好好好。
OK，好，拜
好
拜
，Good night，拜拜，
拜拜，
拜
嗯
拜。
，Good night，拜拜。